Welcome to the September episode of More Sports. I'm your host, Devin Moore. And today we're going to do something a little different. Today we're going to review a comic book, but not just any comic book. We're going to read the comic book of the one and only, the legendary, the nature boy, Ric Flair. And the certain comic that I am reviewing is his new standalone comic from Scout Comics. Of course, it is Code Name Ric Flare. It came out about 2 months ago. Again, just to give you a quick rundown of what it is, it's basically Ric Flair is a super spy, and he basically does basic spy shenanigans. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, it is by Scout Comics. You can pick up for $4.99. Now I know usually if you're not a comic collector, or if you are a comic collector, that is a little bit pricey for about $5 for a trade back issue, but don't worry, it's a pretty decent size. So hey, go support your local comic book shop. Go pick it up. Um, so in this episode, this will contain spoils. This will be a spoiler episode. If you do want to read the book, that does sound interesting, pause this episode, go support your local comic book shop, go pick it up, read it, and then come back and listen to my thoughts. All right? So go ahead. Come back in a little bit. I'll wait a couple more seconds before I start deep diving in. All right. Well, hope everybody's gone because we're about to start reviewing in 3, 2, 1. All right, here comes spoiler review. So yeah, diving into this issue, the first thing that happens as soon as you open up this issue, and this is one thing I enjoy, it is actually takes place, it pops up, or not pops up, you open the page, and it's a White House document, a top secret document from October 6th, 1975. Everything's blacked out that says, everything you are about to read is true, except what isn't. And that's a pretty good deep dive because it's kind of a good mystery. Kind of pulls you in. When I read it, I was like, Lord have mercy. But no, the story does open up with, and I actually recently was listening to the latest Ric Flair documentary on Peacock. Check it out. And it talks about the earlier part of his career. Him and a couple other wrestlers were on a plane back in 75. They're on a small plane. They were on a small plane. Something happens. One engine blows out, and the other engine blows out, and they start going down. Okay, this is true. Plane goes down. It crashes. Everybody's paralyzed. Ric Flair, actually in the documentary, he got hurt. Surgeons said that he'll never wrestle again. So during the panel, plane crashes or whatever. Then it transitions over to the surgery. Okay, comes on with a surgeon light. They're working on him. Ric Flair's in surgery, but they're working on some computers, some not high fancy graphic computers. When Ric Flair's monitor popped up, the whole shebang, right? And so he's sitting in a room. He comes to, and he wakes up to this general. This general calls him a wussy. It's about time you wake up. And he's like, "Son, are you ready to save the world?" And of course, they make a spoof here too, Captain America, and they make it smooth by saying the general's like, "We were trying to save this country, making heroes, but all we really need is a man named Flair." Because you see here in the panel, he's looking at a spoof of a Captain America shield, and the general's like, "We need somebody named Flair. We don't need superheroes." And he goes, "We need super soldiers. We need spies." And while he's with the general goes, "Hey, we put you in some. He gave you the quote unquote truth serum." So he says, "For the next 24 minutes, what do you want?" And Ric Flair goes, "Money." He's like, "Money? Tell me what you really want." He's like, "I want all the money." And it's this typical Ric Flair fashion. He's like, "I want money, Rolls Royce." And the general's like, "You want a Rolls Royce? We'll give it to you." And Ric Flair goes, "I want to kick ass." General goes, "Single ass?" "Nah, man, you ain't wasting taxpayer money. You're going to kick multiple asses. You're going to kick all the asses." And then he's like, "I want a hot girlfriend." The general goes, "Your lower torso is more than anything at Disney World. You're going to have multiple girlfriends. If you ain't using it a whole lot, you're just wasting the taxpayer money." So they get into that. And then he goes, again, they make another because Ric Flair is like, "What was in this shot? Why am I being so truthful?" And he's like, General goes, that's the other half that made Buddy and Steve Superman. And again, another jab at the quote unquote superhero trope in the series. And again, making jab at the super soldier syndrome. So, okay, so they go off about that. Some lady walks in. Oh, again, I'm sorry. The whole time, Ric Flair had a buzz cut, really like the 70s hairdo at the beginning of the comic. So he had his head underneath what was the hairdresser lamp or whatever they call them. Lady walks in, she removes it, and he has now his traditional long golden blonde hair. And then he looks at the panel and he gives us a traditional woo that he's all known for and that he loves. And then we cut up for another U.S. document by the Bureau publisher, yada yada yada. And it informs them that this basically means that they need Ric Flair in Korea. And so he's coming. So we break into now what was 10 years later. Ric Flair's on a plane. And General goes, hey, here's your mission. And he's like, I got some toys for you. And Ric Flair goes, what kind of toys? He's like, you'll find out. So Ric Flair being Ric Flair. By the way, Ric Flair's wearing his signature suit, purple suit. So he's going in there styling and wilding. So he drops down to the plane. We break into a lady's apartment. He comes in. The lady peeks through. Nobody's there. Boom, Ric Flair suddenly breaks into the apartment. And the girl goes, how'd you get in on the technique? And he goes, let's just say it's one of the many reasons that's why I'm the longest reigning world champion in secret agent history. So another flaw there. One thing I will say I do like about this book is you get Flair. You get the typical Ric Flair attitude, the cocky attitude, and this and that, but he's a super spy world. So it's pretty fun. Him and the girl talk for a while. The girl gives him a package. She says, take this and follow. Ric's like, what is? It's a little small box. The girl jumps out the window, does some acrobatics. She taunts Ric Flair. She's like, what's taking so long? And Ric looks out the window and he gives a typical, he goes a woo. Like he's like, I don't know about all this. So they cut to the car and it sees here that Ric Flair's holding a Magic 8-ball. Girl goes, hey, we need to find your way into the warehouse. And once inside, place that 8-ball within a massive shipment that's heading to the U.S. early tomorrow morning. He goes, what's so special about this 8-ball? The girl goes, just ask. Ric goes, okay. He says, is the beautiful young woman next to me made of grapes because she's as fine as wine? And the 8-ball goes, it is certain. And the girl's blushing. She's like, clever now that you just attract one of the world's most smallest and most powerful explosive devices. Or you just activated it. It will detonate in 12 hours because it was a bomb. A Magic 8-ball designed as a bomb. And she goes, let's go. Let's hope you are as good as they say you are in destroying thousands of kilos of cocaine. So it was a cocaine shipment by a bunch of mobsters. Okay, so we cut away. They get to where they're going. And they stop in this place. One of Ric Flair's allies comes out. He goes, it's the Nature Boy. Or no, it's not one of his allies. He comes in. Because again, Ric Flair is known around the world at this time. But nobody knows he's a spy. And so he comes up to the ally that made the bombs. They're talking business. They go upstairs. Boom. Here's a gold. He shows him. The guy shows Ric Flair the golden Magic 8-ball. And he shows the Magic 8-ball, but everybody's cheering. They're trying to give him drinks. Ric Flair's taking it in typical Ric Flair style. So they talk some more. The guy gives Ric Flair some beer. Well, vodka to be more precise. Gives him some vodka. They're sipping. He's like, I want the best. Because the guy's sipping and they're cheering and they're whatnot. They're just having a great old time. Because this guy that Ric Flair's seen, he's a big fan. He's got all the action figures at the time, all the belts, this and that and yada. So after drinking, everybody passes out. Ric Flair picks up the guy's body and he finds a car key. Breaks downstairs in the warehouse. He puts on some shades. Turns out these shades are night vision goggles, and they're looking for the cocaine. Ric Flair finds the cocaine. So he goes ahead and plants the bombs. Some guy notices it. Ric Flair tries to play it off, and they get into a big fight, which is pretty cool because in this comic, the fight sequences are typical pro wrestling moves. Ric Flair clotheslines the guy, and then he hits him in the family jewels, drops him to the ground. So Ric Flair drives off. And then, in typical fashion, he's in a Rolls Royce. He's a BMW, not Rolls Royce. Might be a Rolls Royce. I'm not a very big car guy. Bomb blows up, or the cocaine factory blows up. He drives off. Pulls up to a jet black plane. The girl they held from earlier is there. Flair flirts with her again. And the girl's like, "Will we ever see you again?" And Ric Flair says, "You'll always see me, gorgeous." And then he takes off. That's how it ends. So it's a pretty standard spy story. It's a pretty good spy story. I will say this. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed for the action. I know that wasn't really in-depth. I mean, that was the overall story. And my thoughts when I first read this, it kind of gave me the vibes of being I'd say more like a Saturday morning cartoon, really. A lot of those are made back in the 80s to 90s. You take a celebrity like Ric Flair and you cartoon him up, make him a superhero, make him a spy, and it was things like that. Right? It's an enjoyable read if you're a Ric Flair fan and you're not a big comic fan. I think this will be something good for you to get into and things like that. As of I know of, there's only one issue in the series. I don't know if, again, this is published in Scott Comics, an indie comic line, so I'm not sure if they had another issue in the series. They might. As of right now, I'm not sure, but it was an enjoyable read. I did like the fact that they had some true elements to them. Again, like in the beginning of the story, they had a plane crash earlier in his career, which is true. Him and a couple buddies were on a private plane. They hired an Air Force pilot. Plane went up in the air. It actually lost fuel. Both engines went down. They crashed. And so he did have to have surgery, but that surgery, air quote, in the comic, made him a super soldier, for a sense, for the government to stop cocaine and the Soviet Union, things like that. Now, other than that, could have been more in depth. The bad guys were kind of playing. Again, the bad guy kind of idolized Ric Flair. And he said, "Oh, Ric Flair, the nature boy, come drink vodka with me. Come look at my golden magic 8-ball. This and that. Idolize him. They try to party with Ric Flair, which Ric Flair back in the day was a party boy. You see elements of that, hitting on women, drinking vodka, the whole 9 yards. Then once everybody passes out, he went and did his spy work and things like that, which I did like when he was fighting the one goon that discovered and planting the bomb in the cocaine ship. And you saw some old school classic moves. Again, you saw him clothesline the guy and then do a typical heel tactic of Ric Flair doing a groin shot on the guy. And he blew up the factory and hit him in a bomb, and he drew off in the most luxurious car back in the day of 1975. So this book had a little bit of everything. If I had to rate it a 9 out of 10, I give it a solid 6. It could have been, you could have got to know the side characters a little more. Could have been a little more longer, in my personal opinion. I feel like you could have had an more depth story. But again, like I said, this is kind of more of a Saturday morning cartoon. You get to learn of an origin story, which I think that was a good chunk of the story. You learn an origin story. You learn that back in the day, or early on in his career, Ric Flair wasn't known as anybody. So you get to know that. He becomes a super soldier, and then he becomes this super soldier spy. He's cool, this and that, flirting with girls and this and that. But overall, it's a great story. I recommend it to everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Recommend it to friends. Support indie comics. And just like that, that'll be it for today's episode. I just want to do another mini episode for September. Hey, if you like this, check out my other episodes. Check out all my other episodes on this podcast. I post a new episode the first of every month. I'm also on the Random Hour with Kyle Crump. We post the first Sunday of every month. You never know what we're getting into there. And then we have Popcorn Buckets, where we post a new episode where we sit down and we talk about a movie. We talk about a movie every Sunday. So check it out. And then we have our YouTube channel, Random Hour Incorporated, where you can listen to podcast episodes on there of all 3 podcasts. And we do some original stuff and things like that. And if you enjoyed my review of comics, I've got One series, a comic series done of a Daredevil storyline, the Mayor Fist storyline, just for an example. I checked that out. I'll need to do another series. I'll try to edit those better, this and that. But hey, hope you enjoy it. I'll see you next month, guys.